Hey everybody, welcome back to Bucs at Work. My name is Alan Gorman. I'm the chair of the Department of Management and Marketing at ETSU. And we're back again with another episode of Bucs at Work, which is our video series where we talk to local business folks in the community. And today we are lucky enough to have with us Mr. Edwin Williams. Edwin is a local entrepreneur, and we're going to ask Edwin a few questions about entrepreneurship and being an entrepreneur in East Tennessee. And so first off, welcome, Edwin. How are you doing? Everything going all right?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on the show. And yeah, things are going well. Exciting.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So excellent. So I met Edwin when I became department chair a couple of years ago. One of the first initiatives I started was reimagining or revamping our entrepreneurship program because it just occurred to me that we have such a great area for entrepreneurship here in East Tennessee, and there's such an opportunity for our students to get involved in entrepreneurship. And I reached out to some local folks, and David Nelson actually connected me to Edwin and said, "Hey, you need to talk to this guy, Edwin." And we went and had lunch and had a great conversation. And Edwin and David and Jose Castillo and all those folks have been really integral to helping us make our entrepreneurship minor a success. And we're really looking forward to partnering with you all moving forward on that. So that's how I got to know Edwin. So Edwin, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, I grew up here in Johnson City, moved here from Peoria, Illinois, 1989. Went to Ashley Academy, then University High School. So in a way, I'm local. Wasn't born here, but moved here at a very young age. And then went away for school, came back, worked at the VA, and I moved away to St. Louis, where I started studying mechanical engineering. And that's when I got the entrepreneurship bug, was actually in St. Louis, hanging out with entrepreneurs. And my very first attempt at a business was a company called Get Fit Gadgets. And it was a fitness equipment company where we were trying to build smart fitness equipment. I think we were a little bit too early in that field. We were trying to get equipment to tie into your smartphone via apps. And we might have just been just a tad bit too early. Needless to say, that didn't work out. So moved back here where I had another idea that I had been working on for a couple of years that I decided to start, which was launched at Persevered and eventually became ZenHammer.
Excellent, excellent. So tell us a little bit about ZenHammer. Tell us about that business.
So ZenHammer is a pivot from what Persevered was. So for those who don't know, Persevered was a marketplace where people could post their jobs and contractors could come on our site, find jobs, and then manage their payments through an escrow system. That didn't quite work out the way we thought. And in the process, we got a lot of feedback, and ZenHammer is the result of all that feedback. So we decided to focus just on the contractors. And in short, it's a pocket office for subcontractors, allowing them to manage their records, job tracking, invoicing, schedule, and some basic management stuff. And we've got plans to grow it over the next few years.
Nice. That's exciting. Very cool. So how did you come up with that idea? Like, where did that come from?
So I'm actually about to go back all the way back to St. Louis, actually. When I was living in St. Louis, and I came back to Johnson City to visit my parents because they live here. And my mom had a bad bathroom experience with a contractor. So I figured, you know what? I can come up with a better idea of how to help my mom find contractors. And then at the same time, I had contractor friends talking to them about the experience, and I realized their issues as well. Fast forward to about 2017 when things went sideways. We were actually about to call it quits, and the contractors were like, "Don't quit, you're really close. If you change it this way, this is what we really want." And part of me was like, well, why didn't you tell me this like before?
Yeah.
And so we took all that information and worked with David. David at the same time was like, you know what? it'd probably go better this way. I was like, well, this is exactly what the contractors are telling me now. So we took all that, went through, and did just basically reworked the whole concept just for on the contractor side. Got rid of the homeowner side. And what the contractors really wanted, they didn't want more customers. They wanted a better way to deal with the customers that they had. So I kind of put out a little challenge. I was like, well, all right, if you guys want me to build this for you, you're going to help me name it. So a couple of my friends who are contractors and builders in the area bounced ideas off of them for the name. And we ended up settling on ZenHammer. That was what was the top of the list. It was a really good name. And we're like, all right, that's what we're going with. So.
Nice. Nice. So if someone wanted to find you, is that like an app on their phone they could download?
Yeah. So we're in the last phase of our beta. We're going to do a launch, and then you'll be able to search us on Google Play and iTunes. Our website is getzenhammer.com. And actually, we're about to redo our website here in the next couple of weeks to reflect us, to get ready for the launch. And
nice.
Yeah,
that's exciting.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So what are your thoughts, Edwin? I'm a transplant. I'm from Georgia. I'm not from the area, but I've been here 7 years now. What are your thoughts about being an entrepreneur in East Tennessee?
I think it's very doable, especially if you can plug into the community. So when I first moved back, I was like an island. I had no connection to any of the community here. And it's changed a lot since then. Everybody knows about entrepreneurship. If you ask, hey, I'm wanting to start a business, they can point you to where you need to go. When I first moved here, actually I moved back to Johnson City after David did. There was nothing like that. So finding another entrepreneur back then was hard, and it just felt like you were just by yourself. But this region with the community we have now, it's very accessible for entrepreneurship. We have Spark Plaza, we've got Sync Space, we've got Holston Business Development Center, we've got the co-work space in Bristol. So the community is growing. We have your program. And then on top of that, we have very strong connections now with like Atlanta Tech Village. We've got Launch Tennessee. So this region is very, cost of living is well, nice. And it's not, we've got a strong community here. And for the bigger communities, if you need to go to like Atlanta, to Nashville, to Chattanooga, we have connections there now. The community does. They're not long drives. Atlanta is 4 hours, Nashville's 4 hours, Chattanooga 3. Louisville, Kentucky, that's off the top of my head. I don't know how long that is, but yeah. If you need to go to the bigger areas for something, it's doable. Washington, D.C., 6 hours away. Like, so it's not a bad area. I like it a lot, and it's changed a lot and for the better over the last several years. So I think that at this point, if you're an entrepreneur starting here in East Tennessee, you have launched at the right time.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's changed just in the 7 years that I've been here. When I first got here compared to now, Johnson City and the Tri-Cities areas is very different. And I know you were probably we had this economic development forum, I guess it was a couple of years ago now, and they had a really smart guy from Harvard come and talk. And he basically told the audience, he said, you all are sitting on a gold mine when it comes to entrepreneurship, because you check all the boxes when it comes to having a great situation, for having a hotbed of entrepreneurship. He said, cost of living is ridiculously low. You've got a qualified workforce that you can draw from here. You've got a university where you can build partnerships and draw intellectual property. Like you said, you're within driving distance from any major city on the Eastern Seaboard. The supply chain network is perfect here in East Tennessee. So there's so many things all pointing towards this being a great area for entrepreneurship. But one of the things that I have seen, and I think we've gotten a lot better about it, is that the scene was kind of spread out here, there, and this pocket and this pocket. And so what Edwin and I have tried to do is and David Nelson and others, is try to bring everybody together and have a common conversation and talk about let's move forward as a region rather than these little pockets of entrepreneurship. So in that vein, I know you all are a part of something you call Founders Forge. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about it?
So Founders Forge started, actually, I'll go way back to the beginning, as a pitch competition, pitches and pints. It sort of came out of, again, a lot of things are born out of frustrations. And David and I wanted to see more activity in the entrepreneurship scene in Johnson City. At the same time, Tony Lettich had met Arnab Chakraborty, who has a startup, Flow MedTech, and he's also a Johnson City native. And he was wanting to do the same thing at the same time. So then Tony Lettich introduced Arnab to David and myself. And then we decided, you know what, we're entrepreneurs, just go ahead and do it. If people show up, they show up. If not, they don't. So we went and talked to Travis Woodall, who at the time owned the venue. And Travis was like, all right, I'll help you guys out. And he allowed us to rent the venue. And we were sitting there on the first event, and all of us were like, okay, we probably aren't going to have anybody show up. We had about 120 people show up, and all of us were like shocked. We had to go get more tables, more chairs, and everything.
Wow.
And it turned out to be a really good event. And from there, we decided, you know what, let's do it again. And then we formed Startup Tri-Cities as an organization after we were getting more and more requests for stuff because we'd done pitches and pints. And then we rebranded as Founders Forge when we decided to actually redo our mission, restructure, so we could be a much more effective organization. And Founders Forge, basically it's for entrepreneurs, by entrepreneurs. We're trying to build a community, focus on tech, help people connect to the resources they need. And yeah, hopefully like our goal is to have 10, have successful startups in the region over the next 10 years, turn this area into like a mini tech hub.
Yeah, that's an awesome, awesome thing that you guys are doing. One of the things I've been so impressed with you and David and Jose and everybody else is just how giving you guys are of your time and energy. Like anybody that has a question or just wants to talk, you guys have been so giving with your time and helping each other and the rest of the community. So I think this is, I mean, if you ask me, that's what you need to have for a good entrepreneurship ecosystem is you have to be willing to help each other out. Otherwise, you know, everybody's going to crash and burn on their own. So I want to thank you and David and everybody else for that. Is, you know, this spirit of giving back, I think is huge. And I think that's what's going to push us forward.
Thank you guys for your support. There have been times where like, do we call it quits? And everyone's like, no.
Yeah, no, don't call it quit. I think we're only getting started. And that's what Sonu Merchandani is our local guru who heads up our entrepreneurship minor here at ETSU. And I keep telling him, look, man, we're just getting started. Like this is the ground floor and we got a long ways to go because there's so much potential here. And so the fact that we're working together with folks like you all, I think it's going to make all of us stronger. So I appreciate that. So what do you love most about being an entrepreneur?
Oh, I guess I'd say the number one thing is getting an idea that I have out to people so they can use it. I know it's a good feeling. You can't get in it for the money. Like you'll burn out. Like
Yeah.
You're not going to be making money for a long time.
Yeah.
But the idea of I've helped develop this product or service and getting it to people, and then for me personally, making their life better because of it. That's like my driving idea is how do I, like the people I'm going to be selling to, they're my friends. So it's like, how do I make my friend's life better? That's for me my driving force behind why I do what I do as an entrepreneur. So, yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
and seeing them happy when they use it.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, that makes a big difference.
yeah.
That's awesome. So then the flip side of that is, what's your least favorite thing about being an entrepreneur?
Oh man, the frustration. Like so many things just go wrong. like yeah. I know everyone talks about like the sunny sides of entrepreneurship, but like there's so many things that just go wrong. And it's like you will have a good day and then 10 bad days right after each other. And nothing goes like there's some days where, and it's like the emotional drain from that. There are days where I'm like, okay, look at my list, what I got to do. Just pick the most important thing and just get that done. Screw everything else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pick something and go with it.
Yeah. And so that it's a grind. It's not easy. And trying to remember off the top of my head, I cannot remember the exact quote or who said it. They said that it's something along the lines of the trait that determines your success is your perseverance, like how well you can persevere. I know I butchered the quote and I can't remember who said it, but sure, if you Google it, it'll pop up. Yeah. And, and so if you're wanting to become an entrepreneur, there are people who, like for instance, Seth Goodwin, 300 million in 300 days. That's near impossible. It's more like, hey, I was building this out for 10 years. On the year 11, someone came around and was like, oh, wow, this is really valuable. I'm going to pay you $50 million. So, but for the 10 years before, you're like, am I going to eat?
Right. Well, and it's funny you mentioned that, because that's one of the things we talk with our students about is when you think about entrepreneurship from like the Hollywood perspective, it's some like 19-year-old kid who has this great idea and makes, a fortune. And the reality is it's not like that at all. Like most entrepreneurs they're working folks who've had a good idea and maybe started out on their own after several years working in the industry. And, the Hollywood ideal of what an entrepreneur is almost non-existent. You just don't see that. And so one of the things we talk about is, it's all about grit, determination, perseverance, and even your first idea is not going to be your best idea or your most successful idea. You may have several ideas, and one of them may stick. And based upon that idea, you may have to pivot and totally change your model to fit whatever's working. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's extremely important to tell our students is, that it doesn't happen overnight. It's hard work, determination, coming up with lots of great ideas, and then sharing those ideas with other people, right? That was one of the big things. David gave a talk at Idea Academy a couple of years ago about myths of entrepreneurship. And he talked about, one of the things is that, if you come up with a good idea, you gotta hoard it, right? You can't tell anybody about it. But he said that's the opposite. What you should be doing is sharing your idea with others, getting feedback, and making that idea better. That's how you make ideas grow.
There's another quote off the top of my head. I am going to butcher, and I can't remember off who said it, but look it up. It's if you have an original idea, don't worry about hiding it, because you're going to have to ram it down people's throats.
Exactly. That is so true. That's so true. Yeah, and that's, I'm really trying to help us as an ecosystem, entrepreneurship ecosystem, focus on giving back and sharing. Like everybody has so many good ideas, but if they keep them all to themselves, no one else knows about them. So if we share them with each other, and we can grow this thing, organically together, the sky's the limit when it comes to that kind of thing. So I'm excited about it.
Like people stealing each other's ideas isn't huge. It's very small, because usually, like if I tell you my idea, you already got something else you're working on. You're not going to give up your idea to steal my idea to go forward.
Right.
And so like the idea that someone's going to is going to steal, even actually Airbnb, they actually had their idea stolen um, by three brothers in Germany. Um, and those guys in Germany, it was, I believe their MO, they would make clone versions of like the Silicon Valley, dump a bunch of money in, and then come and say, "Hey, we're going to buy you," type thing. There's a whole one of the big entrepreneurship magazines did a whole article on this, but basically the CEO of Airbnb was like, "No, we'll take you on," and he gave a talk about it at Y Combinator. It's on YouTube, I believe, and he talks about this very incident, and he was like, even if someone steals your idea, they don't know the value, the idea's core values, and they don't know the idea's final vision. So they can only do what they see. And if you're working correctly, by the time that they clone what you've done, you're already moving the vision forward. And because they don't have that vision, they can't do what you're doing and outcompete. So.
Right. Yeah, that is so true. That's awesome. So for our students who might be interested in becoming an entrepreneur, do you have any books or articles or resources that you'd recommend they take a look at?
Okay, I have to distill this down, I guess. I would read, okay, if I had to distill it down, the book list, I would say 0 to 1. The Lean Startup, Business Model Generation, I'm going to throw in Never Eat Alone. That's about making connections and networking. And Start with Why. I'd say I'd say the 5 books off the top of my head to pick would be those 5.
Yeah. I've read a couple of those. Those are good books, especially the 0 to 1, the Peter Thiel book.
Yes.
Yeah, that one's a great one.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So if our students are really interested in one day being an entrepreneur or small business owner, what should they be doing right now to prepare, besides taking classes and coursework and all that stuff? Is there something they should be focused on doing right now?
Yeah, so going back to when I lived in St. Louis and I was getting ready to start my first business, or attempt to start my first business, I should say. I was among a group of entrepreneurs, and they said just start, because I come from there's protocols for everything. How do you mix a buffer? How do you do this? What have you? And so I'm like, are there protocols for entrepreneurship? And they're all looking at me like I'm crazy. They're like, just start. And in my head, I'm like, okay, what do I do? Like, is there a formula for this? Is there like best prep? Like, and there's all like, you know what? No, it's basically, it's an experience driven thing. So yes, even though you're reading the books and doing all these things, the best thing to do is just start the process. If you have an idea, sorry about that. If you have an idea, start the process of fleshing it out. Business model generation has the business model canvas in it. Print it out. Start going through that and doing the exercise. Start meeting those people. Start pitching your idea to people. Just start. There is nothing. It's like, yes, you can read the theory all you want, but again, I used to fight MMA. You can read about throwing a punch and fighting in a ring all day long, but that is totally different than stepping in, throwing punches, and getting punched back.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
So
well, and that's one of the things as Sonu and I have gone about reimagining this minor is we instituted what we're calling an entrepreneurship lab, which revolves around what you're talking about, is idea generation, pairing the student up with a mentor who can help nurture and grow that idea. rather than just sitting around reading articles about doing it,
Mhm.
having an experience where they can actually do it. And, we talked with David, with a couple of our students who head up our entrepreneurship club. And that was one of the things he talked about. He talked about was, what better time to crash and burn with a business idea than when you're in the safety of the college experience, right? Like if your idea sucks, it's okay. You can come up with another one. It's not like you're hanging your hat on that one idea as a college student. You can come up with all kinds of ideas and test them and do experiments and see what works and what doesn't, within the comforts of the university setting. So I really like that hands-on idea.
Again, another quote I have, they're all off the top, they're off the top of my head, but the guy said, 1 in 10 businesses fail, so I made 11.
Nice. Just keep coming up with ideas. That's part of it. So thinking back to young Edwin years ago, back when you were a youngster in high school and you thought you knew it all way back then, what's something that you know now that you really wish you had known then?
It's okay to fail. One of the things, looking back through my educational experience, is that we are taught not to fail, and that in failing, we lose validation, personal validation, I should say. And that holds a lot of people back. This fear that if I do this and I fail, people are going to look down on me. I'm going to be shunned, all these things. And that fear of failure holds like a lot of people back. Like, I can't do this because I might lose my job. I can't do this because my family might get upset. I can't do this because, and Tim Ferriss in one of his books talks about your worst case scenario and writing down, like, it's about like the concept of naming what scares you. So say, what's your worst case scenario? Write that down. Literally list out, okay, this goes bad, what are all the consequences? And then go through each consequence and say, okay, if this happens, how do I get out of it? And go through each of that as a mitigation to that mechanism that people have. Because once you can call it naming a thing and understanding it, then you can actually move through it when it happens. And that fear, yes, it's okay to be afraid, but don't let it paralyze you. Don't let it stop you. Don't let the fear of failure happen, because in business, you're going to fail. The lean startup, I mentioned it earlier, talks about that, where you're, as a business person, your goal is to create a bunch of experiments. Your business is a hypothesis.
Yep.
You running your business is the experiment. The results of your business is the conclusions, and then you iterate again. It's like, okay, I got these. And so it's a learning process. Failure is learning, and if you're not failing, you're not learning. So.
Absolutely. I love that. And that, again, going back to the students, we're taught, we're raised, taking multiple choice tests where there's always a right answer, right? Mm-hmm. And then when you get out in the workplace, there's no right answer, right? Yeah. You got to pick something and go with it, and trust your instincts and trust your background, your education, your values. And I think that's what we're trying to do, is encourage students that, it's okay to fail. It's okay to fall on your face now, because you can learn from that and build and grow and get better from that. So I love that perspective. So last question, Edwin, what are you most proud of in your career?
That I'm most proud of would be the connections I've made in the community, honestly. I'm a people person, and the ability that because of what I've done, being able to, for instance, I started out on the board of young professionals years ago. And I'm proud to say we brought back Pie Wars. Pie Wars is a yearly thing again.
Yeah.
things like that, and being able to help move throughout the community, help the community through as a offshoot of my business. Going through, that's one of the things I'm the most proud about. Like, even if the business crashes and burns, I'm happy that I was able to make a difference in this community in various aspects. And so that's what I'm most proud of. So,
Yeah, that's awesome, Edwin. Keep up the great work. You're doing a great job.
thank you.
So if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, let's say we had a student that said, man, I really want to talk to this guy. How can they get a hold of you?
My email is probably the best way, Edwin at getzenhammer.com. You can also reach me through Johnson City Area Home Builders or Founders Forge. And because those are the two organizations I'm very active in as well. And so, and once we get out of 2020, because 2020 is a really crazy year right now,
To say the least.
You'll find me at a brewery.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. The beer in our hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, excellent. Well, Edwin, I can't thank you enough for taking the time for joining me today. And I'm really excited about working with you all, with our students through the entrepreneurship ecosystem that we're developing. And I would strongly suggest anybody watching this, feel free to reach out to Edwin. He's a phenomenal guy, always willing to give back. And we're so glad and thankful that he's a part of our ecosystem. And thank you, Edwin, for everything that you do for our community. So I appreciate you.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And tune in next time, everybody. And thank you for joining us again for another episode of Bucs at Work.